Welcome everybody to my talk. My talk is about custom components, and I'm going to tell you why they're probably easier than you think, unless you're already familiar with them, then you probably be bored, but maybe I can still give you a little bit of insight of some things that you should probably think about, but you haven't fully thought about. But in any case, my name is Lammertsma. I'm CTO at Pixplicity. We're here in the Netherlands, in Utrecht. We make apps for larger brands, international brands, mostly Dutch brands. We also do custom tablets and embedded systems. But I'm going to talk about custom components. So, first things first, what is a component? Well, all of these things are components, right? I mean, the Android SDK, of course, comes with a preset bundle of all sorts of different components, like buttons and text views, edit texts, toggle buttons, the progress spinner. So these are the stuff that come out of the box, but this doesn't always cut it for you. You want to have something a little nicer, maybe something that has some different behavior. So that's when we get to stuff we call custom components. And there are plenty of custom components out there on the web. You can take a look at them, you can download them, and use them. It doesn't necessarily mean that you'll learn how they work, but a couple ones out there that you could take a look at is, for instance, keeps on going back. That's odd. For instance, the staggered grid view. This is one that allows you to put views next to each other in a grid view that would, whereas a grid view would always align them, this one allows you to put them staggered. Another one is, this is by Jake Wharton. It's the view pager indicator. It's here at the bottom. It can be nice. I think it's kind of an iOS-y thing, but you could consider using it, maybe with some holo flavor. Another one is, by the way, I'm not advocating the use of these. These are just for illustrative purposes. This is a drag-drop grid. The idea is that you long press on an item, and right now my finger is actually moving item 2 around, and the other ones are wobbling like the iOS home screen. And if you drag it down, then you can remove it altogether. So that's a cute component. You can rearrange them that way, of course. That's the idea. Since Ice Cream Sandwich, of course, showcases for like a tutorial. How do you illustrate some functionality in your app? Might be really nice to have some sort of showcase on top. These are all components that are already out there, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to be talking about those. So I'm instead going to be taking an example throughout my presentation, and that is this FontTextView, I call it. You can make, of course, your own type. You can use your own typefaces in your app. That's nothing new. I mean, you probably know that. But I'm going to take this as an example to show you why this is an ideal candidate for a custom view, because it's super easy to make. And another example I'm going to give you is a simple animation, just to illustrate some layouting and drawing. So, custom components, right? Well, why do you want to use custom components? Why don't you just, write it out in a layout? For instance, you could do that. You could do that, for instance, for that staggered grid view. You could just have a scroll view, and inside that a linear layout, horizontally oriented, and inside that two vertically oriented linear layouts. Yeah, you're getting there. There are a lot of layouts in there, which means there are going to be there are lots of view groups. That means there's going to be a lot of unnecessary layouting, probably. Another problem with that would, of course, be, especially in this case of image views, all of those things are going to be in memory all the time. So you're not really, making good use of like a list view where you exchange views. You have the convert view and you recycle it. But actually, usually you can't. You'll always need some custom code, especially in the case of this example. You're going to have to set the typeface somehow. You can't do that just through the layout. So that's not going to work. So then why not just write it out in code? I mean, we could take that text view and we could just do, set typeface and then, get the typeface from the assets folder and put it in there. You could do that, but you want to keep your views and your model separated. Like, okay, so say we have an activity that inflates a layout, and in that layout we have a text view. If you're going to do everything out in code, why not just take that text view and put it in your activity and create it from code? Yeah, you can do that, but it's going to make your code totally unmanageable. And really, if you want to keep to the view model controller, you don't want to do that. I mean, before you know it, you have some crap like this, and I don't want to touch your code, because if this is anything to go by, no thanks. So then why don't we just make a combination of layout and code? Well, we will, actually, except it's not going to be clumsy. So we're going to do it in a nice way. And if you never used a custom component, never made your own before, it's probably in a different way than you think, because I'm not talking about leaving that text view in your layout and addressing that text view via find view by ID and then doing like set typeface on it, because that really implies that your activity knows something about the view that you want to give some visual flavor. If you want to change the font, then instead of changing that in your layout, you now have to dive into the code of your activity and change it there. And yes, you could probably do it with a style, but I mean, we're really going into a slippery slope then. So, back to our example of this text font view. How are we going to make this? Well, there's probably one thing you should know about a custom component, and that is that at the root of any component is the view. In fact, the documentation says about it as the basic building block of all of Android's UI components. So, the view, of course, is just a class. We can take that class and we can extend it, right? So let's do that. Here I have my FontTextView. I've extended TextView, which in turn extends view, so that's cool. And I automatically, by doing this, have to include 3 constructors. The first constructor is the constructor for when you're generating it from your code, like what I just did with the new text view. You, of course, provide a context, and you create it in your code. Well, we don't really want to do that, but we're just going to make the constructor so that we can, for whatever reason. The second one is more important. This one is when you're actually inflating it through your XML. You get an attribute set from the inflator, and that attribute set gives you information about whatever you have for, like, the most simple example is probably like the layout width and the layout height, right? And by providing this super, of course, you just give it on through the text view, which in turn gives it on to the view, which then makes sure that, the layouting works. So this snippet of code will, of course, work. I mean, it's just a text view. So all we would have to do is take this font text view, put it in our layout, and it would behave exactly the same as a text view. I do want to quickly mention this. This is essentially the same as the previous one, also for inflation from XML, except you can provide a base. You can provide a base style to it, and if I have time, I can get to that. But so, like I said, this is just basically a text view. It doesn't do anything new. So I'll just throw in a function in there that does set typeface, and I've introduced a util class here. I'll define that in just a moment. But here, what I just want to do, the idea that I have is, my dream is, I just say, okay, I want some font. I want like Georgia.ttf. I just throw that in there, and it shows up. I don't have to do any extra coding. I just have my font text view in my layout, and it works. So here I've defined that util class. This just basic stuff. We have we create from the assets folder a typeface. That's literally putting these font files inside your assets folder. If you're not familiar with the assets folder, it's basically like it's kind of like the res folder, except it's uncompressed and it is delivered with your app, and you can just address it. You can take anything out of it; doesn't really matter what. So we get from our context, we get the assets folder to keep things kind of tidy. I put in the subfolder fonts. And yeah, this works. This is kind of cool. It's probably not the best way of doing things, because if I have 2 font text views, then and I both give them the same font name, then it's going to be doing this creating from asset twice. So we should probably reuse that. And just to show you, because it's a better way of doing it, I'll just show you really quick. I just took a hash map just for caching. So I take this typeface that I generate, that I've created from the assets folder. I throw it into the cache, and if it exists, then I just grab it. If it doesn't, then I create it and I put it in there. And the last step is actually doing the magic of putting in the typeface. Nothing really too special. The set typeface just belongs to the text view, and you just provide a typeface, and it just works. Okay, that concludes the code part of it. Now all we have to do is get our view in there, and the way of doing that is where you would normally just have a text view, you now provide font text view, except make sure that you provide the fully qualified name for it, because otherwise Android, of course, doesn't know where it's supposed to be looking for it. And that's pretty much it. This will work. It will just be a text view, because it doesn't know actually when or how it's supposed to invoke this font, this typeface setting. So how do we? What we would want to do here, ideally, is probably add an attribute here that says typeface is Georgia.ttf. Or even better yet, actually, would be I would take the style, the sample text style, and instead I would set my style that I want the Georgia.ttf. So this is how I'm going to do it. This is I guess the only really tricky part about it. It's an attribute. You define an attribute by you can define it within a styleable, because what we want to do is we want to define how we're going to style a particular component. So I declare a styleable, which I'm going to invoke from my code in just a moment, and I'm going to call it, for consistency's sake, I'm going to call it FontTextView. And that style then, of course, includes an attribute that I want to use. Typeface, right? This is a string. A better way, actually, that I personally believe in doing this is actually taking it outside of the styleable, because if you want to use that same attribute name, you take it outside of there, because if you're going to reuse the same attribute name, Android's going to complain that it's already been defined. So just define it once at the beginning and just reuse it like this. I think you can actually provide format as reference. I'm not sure if that works, but this works too. So back to our font text view. Like I said, when our font text view is being created from XML, so in the second constructor, we have an attribute set, provided to us from the inflator, and we can use that. I went ahead and just chose for a solution that always invokes it, because that gives me the opportunity to do some, extra flavoring of whatever I want with the font text view, regardless of which constructor is invoked. It's kind of, I think this kind of stuff always kind of illustrates a problem with the the constructor, construction in Java. But anyway, this will work. Okay, so here's my init function. I take the attribute set. Actually, I should probably first say this thing at the bottom is what we were looking at before, right? This is just setting the typeface. So I'm going to reuse that particular function. In the init function, let me just show you you see at the top that we get the attribute set. So we can check if that attribute set is not null. That implies, of course, that it's being inflated through XML. And then we just read it. We obtain the style attributes. In this case, we provide whatever default style we set. I think at the very beginning, I actually set it to 0. So by default, it won't use any style at all. But what it tries to do then is it uses this typed array to locate that attribute that we defined. So let me just point out the important parts. Okay, so this is that declared styleable that we had, right? We called that styleable font text view, and the attribute name is typeface. So here's that attribute. Here's that styleable that we're trying to read into the typed array. This is how we address it. So r.styleable.fontTextView. And here, actually, when looking for a specific attribute within that styleable, we look for and of course, in ADT, this is all automatically generated when you build your file, when you build your project automatically. So you can just r.styleable, and these things will just show up. And then finally, what you want to do, which is a common pitfall, is you want to recycle that typed array because of memory, I guess. And if the typeface is provided, if it's in the attribute set, you just set the typeface. So back to this layout. Right, what we wanted to do is we wanted to add this attribute. How do we do that? Well, it's really easy. Here at the bottom. Oh, sorry, actually at the top. First, what we want to do is we have to define our namespace declaration. We do that at the top. I've called mine app because it's an app. And the path to it is the same as the path to the Android, except you replace the Android and you put in your full package name. So I called mine com.pixplicity.mdevcon 2013, the same package name that, of course, is in my where my widget is located. And down here is where I actually use that namespace that I've defined as typeface. It's a string. I provide here a font called ableregular.ttf. So does this work? Let's take a look. Here we have an emulator. Here are the components that I've been showing you. I actually haven't tested this. It does work. It works. It works fantastically. And I think I can actually even rotate this to show you what happens on rotation events. And if I can figure out how. Yes. Close enough. Yes, it works. It works. And why does it work on rotation? Well, because in this case, my application is when it's rotated, nothing special happens. So my old activity, and actually fragment, of course, because it's in it's fragment, is it's destroyed, and a new activity is brought up and recreated. So it reinflates the layout, and the exact same magic happens that we just did before. And there's nothing more to it than that. I mean, with those lines of codes that I wrote, I am literally done. I don't have to do anything anymore. I can actually provide in that style document. I could be able to theoretically provide the typeface that I want to use, and all I would have to do is just throw in a bunch of text views, font text views now, and I'm done. So that's really cool. That's nice. But how do we get there? Style. So this is the style that I've been working with so far. If I actually show you the code of what I was working with just a moment ago, I can do that really quick. You'll see that I've set the font for all of these. See? So for each one, I was also using a different font for each one. But if I wanted to have an application with using all the same fonts, then I don't want to have to write this out each time. I want to make best use of those styles. So let me take a look how to do that. This is the style I've been working with so far. I'm just providing some standard string in there with a particular text size. But what I want to do is I want to specify the typeface, and this is how I do it. Again, just like before, we had to specify the namespace. And whereas you always provide the standard Android namespace, also can use your own namespace. So here's my namespace. Again, the com.pixplicity.mdevcon 2013, and then the attribute name that I want to define. And that works. So now I have a different. Now this one is stylized. And it just uses the font, whatever is default set in the stylable, in the style sheet. And I can show you that. Here I have my different font text views. And I've done nothing. I actually have bold on the top one, but that was something that I wanted to add, and I thought it might be a little bit too much for this presentation. But you also have, as you can see, there's no attribute there for the the typeface. They're just the standard things because I want the different text views to show different texts. All literally that I've done here is I've replaced text view with my fully qualified fully qualified name to my font text view. So that kind of concludes the font text view. It does. When I talk to people about this solution that I prefer, this font text view, I always get the criticism, which is valid, that it only works for a text view. You can, if you want to have a button that also has a custom typeface, then you have to do the same stuff. Well, almost the same stuff with some overlap maybe for the button, for the edit text, and for anything else that really extends a text view. And it does kind of make it a nuisance. But I'd rather do that for like the 5 different components I want to use than having to write out set typeface for the 100 different text views and buttons and whatever I have in my app that I would normally do, and cluttering my code in the meantime. So that is a caveat, I guess, but I think the pros outweigh the cons. In any case, it's a good illustration. The second thing that I want to show you is a simple animation. It's this is going to be a component that's basically just a very simple view that draws something, and what it's going to do is, I can maybe show you what I want it to do. Well, let's just suppose this is what we want to do. We have a circle, and it has an arc that's filled in a certain color. And as you can see, it's nicely spaced in the width. And because I want to keep it a circle, I have it basically setting its height. So there are 2 things that I have to keep in mind when doing this. First of all, obviously, drawing. But the second thing that I also have to do is I have to do the measuring of my component correctly. And ideally, of course, what I want to use is match parent. I want to set the width to, match parent, and I want to set the height maybe to wrap content. So first things first, let's create our class. SimpleAnimatedView extends view. in the fields, I've gone ahead and created my objects. I create my objects upon the creation of the class, and that's for a reason. Because these are used for painting, obviously, so they'll be done on draw events. If I were to instead, each time in my draw event, on my onDraw, do this, new paint.anti-alias flag, that means I would be allocating new memory. And that's not really a bad thing because, Android's cool, it has a garbage collector, that works. But you're going to be, for 60 frames a second, creating new objects in memory, and you're going to be battling the garbage collection by allocating memory and the garbage collection, trying to clean it up again. So yeah, you could still reach that 60 frames a second, but you're not making the garbage collector happy because it has to run the CPU cycles. And it's also slower because there is a minor 2 to 3 millisecond delay, and I think that's actually times 2, for the collection of objects. So that might give a little bit of jank in your smooth animations. So the trick is, of course, just take those allocated objects and recycle them. Allocate them once and keep on reusing them. Because as long as you have one reference to the object that you keep on reusing, it doesn't need to be cleaned up. So in my init function, again, I just basically set all the different things that I want to use. I could also create them there, but that would take more lines of code and wouldn't fit on a slide. But here is just basically for my, the background. I have a fill with a gray color. I have a stroke around it with a slightly darker shade. And I have a stroke for, a fill for drawing the arc, which is going to be a comfortable holo-colored shade of blue. Like I said, allocate them before you use them. Oh, the other thing is you also for layout events, because layouting can happen a lot of times also. So, especially if you have like a weird animation that's kind of also causing layout events, then you also want to avoid that. In general, you just want to avoid it. Now for the measurement. The measure function in Android is a strange thing to understand. The good thing is you don't really have to understand how it works, as long as you have the right intention. Like I'll just go through it with you, and you'll see where it becomes weird. What I want to do is I have my animated control, and I want that control to respect, of course, the padding. So the place where the control is actually drawn, the circle, is offset, from the top and from the left by, the X and the the left and the top padding, and offset on the bottom and right accordingly. Because I'm drawing a circle, I need to provide a. I think I'm getting ahead of myself. I have to provide a diameter. We'll get into that in just a moment. But the width of my component is going to be relative to is going to be in part determined by the width, by the minimum width, plus the padding left, plus the padding right. So here, what I've done is I've set the minimum width, and I've asked Android to try to resolve the size and state based upon what the suggested minimum width is, based on the specification from the onMeasure function. Now, the onMeasure function gives you a measure spec, and that is this weird thing. It basically consists of two components that come from Android. It gives you a width, like a hint. It tells you that, for instance, you want it to match the parent width, but only Android knows how that reflects, through the view hierarchy. So when you ask it to resolve the size and state, it will try to fit it according to that measure spec, and it'll return you a value that best fits. In this case, that would just be the width of the parent. So let's assume that that's the width, and that the height is then determined from the width. We do the same thing. We take the padding again, but now instead we take whatever that size gave. Now, if you're paying attention, you probably already noticed something strange going on, because, wait a second, wasn't W the width? Well, no, actually, that was this integer bit representation, not of the width itself, but because Android is doing these clever things like with compressing it so it doesn't use too much memory when it's being shuffled around between your onMeasure and onLayout, it actually it keeps that for itself. So you can ask for the actual width based on that spec through this function. So I guess the thing to take home from this is when you do a resolve size and state, that int value is a binary compression of the size and its state. And you can get the value that you want back through doing the same measure spec and calling the static function getSize. And then you actually get the size. I think it's in pixels, but it doesn't really matter because whatever you return is going to go straight into the set measure dimension, and that is in the same unit. So here what I've done is the minimum height now is determined from the height, from the width of the component, plus the padding vertically. But since I've added the padding horizontally already, I have to subtract that first. So what should happen is the component should be square. And square, when I say square, I mean square based upon the width component so that the height component matches. So yeah, exactly. These measure specs are information about how big the view parent wants the view to be. I think that's how they call it. So when you do an on measure and you set this dimension, of course your component changes. At least when Android thinks it should be changed. And you get a callback function for that, and that's called onSizeChanged. And now you'll actually get the pixel width and height, and you also get the old width and height if you want to use that. And you can use this information to determine how you're actually going to draw your control. So I have a rect here that I defined as a field, and I have, let me see what else. I also have here at the bottom, I also have a radius. I need the rect and the radius, of course, to draw a circle, and I think the radius is actually specifically for the arc. This code looks more complicated than it actually is. It's basically just what it's doing is it's taking the width of my component now, and it's taking those paddings off so that it only draws within the padding that you specified. And then finally, this diameter is then, of course, the radius is half the diameter. So there's nothing too strange about that. Now, of course, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using these fields that I've defined for drawing, and that's what I do here. I draw the circle, and the circle I'm using. I have a background. Of course, I'm first drawing a nice, nice light shade of gray for my background, and it basically just draws that circle from the top left from the top left plus that radius, and using that radius to draw a nice circle. Same for the stroke. There's a little darker shade of gray being used for the stroke. And then the arc. And the arc actually takes two values. It takes a starting angle and a sweep angle. And I use a foreground color to fill it up with a nice shade of blue. Okay. So this would actually produce already what we want to accomplish. We would get probably an empty circle because these values for start angle and sweep angle are probably 0. But if you set them to something else, then it'll look pretty. You could probably use that for a pie chart or something like that. Maybe give it some extra graphical nicety. And you could have actually a pretty nice control for that. The layouting will work because it takes the height based upon the width component, so that works just fine. But I promised a animated view, so I'm going to make it animated. What I have here is I've defined a animator as just a runnable. It's just something that runs on every frame. And all that I've done here is I've just changed the sweep angle for the arc. And each time that sweep angle is incremented, it invokes indirectly itself, again, with a certain delay. And then it invalidates the view so that the onDraw will be run whenever Android thinks it should be run. So here at the bottom, I have included a little bit of jelly bean logic. I'm going to be running my animator runnable. I'm going to be running that on the vsync. And the 16, of course, you might ask, what is that kind of arbitrary value? That's, of course, this 1 second divided by 60 frames. So that's in milliseconds. I personally believe that more people should probably be focusing on that last line because the vsync, or actually the choreographer in Jelly Bean allows you as a developer to run things in sync with your device. So you'll get that nice fluid animation at 60 frames a second. Because otherwise, I'm not sure if you guys ever saw the Google I/O talk about choreographer. If you haven't, it's definitely worth a watch. Because if you don't, it could be that your runnable is being invoked just between the drawing of 2 frames. And you want to avoid that because even if your draw operation takes less than 60 milliseconds, just because it has a slight offset after the frame, it could span over the next frame. So it would be best to delay that so that each time it's invoked, it runs, in that vsync. So use that when you can. Of course, it's a and this invalidation function that just indirectly causes the view to be redrawn. So at some point in the future, Android will, and it probably in this case it'll do it immediately, decide to redraw the view. Upon which, of course, onDraw is called, and our arc nicely sweeps around our circle. So let's take a look at this. It's running on the emulator, so it's not perfectly smooth. It is Jelly Bean, so it should be running a vsync, but it's the emulator nonetheless. Yeah, it's looks good. Worked well. So the sweep angle is being incremented here on every animation step. Yeah, in a moment it's going to loop over, so it's actually a little bit more logic than that. But this is basically what it boils down to. This is the onDraw. The extra awesome bonus about using custom components over whatever hacky solution you thought of is this. I love this. This is brilliant because your component will just be invoked through ADT, and the entire lifecycle will be nicely followed, and it'll draw inside your editor if you're using Eclipse. I don't know how it works on the other platform. Sorry, can't speak. And you'll get this great heads up, and you'll know exactly what it looks like. So I really love this part about using custom components. It almost makes it all worth it. It does make it all worth it. Oh, am I kidding? And the other thing is that it actually shows up under those under that list of components. So you have a whole set, of course, of all the different Android components, and all of your custom ones, they just appear in there too. So if you're into the graphical editor, and you like dragging and dropping controls, I'm not really into that kind of thing, but if you like dragging and dropping your controls, then you can just drop that in there. You can set all these attributes that you've defined. You can just set them through ADT. So what have we done? Well, for those of you who haven't been paying attention, we have actually written a custom component. We wrote two actually. These custom components, I also illustrated to you why you should use them. We actually wrote the layout to contain one. Like, how do you put it in an existing layout? How do you define your own attributes? How do you introduce new ones? I only did a string. You can do anything. You can actually do enumeration, so enums. You can also define those. You can also use those attributes in your own custom-defined style sheets. And I showed you how to do measuring and drawing of a component. What I didn't show you is how you can, when you should use the on layout. And I didn't do that because it kind of gets into some complications with the. It's a difficult thing to do. It's like when you want to have a view group, like an extended linear layout or something like that. How do you cope with showing views? Then you're basically instructing your children how to lay out instead of how to measure and draw yourself. There are a few things that you should be wary of. I showed you one earlier, so maybe you guys can tell me what's wrong with this code. What have I missed out here? Yeah, I forgot to recycle that typed array. Yeah. So each time my view will be inflated, it is going to call this init function, which is going to be reading the typed array, and every single time it layouts. So for each, if I rotate my device, it's going to keep on keeping this thing in memory. So we want to avoid that. Another thing to be wary of is this one. So what's wrong here now? Yeah, allocation again. Yeah, well, I actually have two allocations. I'm creating a rect, I'm creating a paint. Let's avoid that. Even if it's the smallest thing, I mean, you want to avoid the GC kicking in at all. So avoid that not only in draw, also in layout. But in other words, just listen to lint, because lint will warn you about this. And if you're not listening to lint, then you're doing a lot of other things wrong too. So. And the other thing is that I personally want you to do this vsync. So whenever you post a post a runnable for your animator. Preferably try to do that on the vsync. Now, don't take my word for it. There are plenty of other resources. There's actually a training, I think that was since 2 weeks ago. I saw it come up by Rich Hinman. There's a training up on the developer site. It's under trainings, obviously. User experience, because that's what it's all about. And there it is under creating custom views. And now you're going to get into ambiguity of what is it a view? Is it a component? Is it a widget? I don't think Google knows, because here they call it a view. And here at the guide, they actually call it a custom component, so I'm not sure. And then the package name also has widget in it. I don't know. There's also a great resource for just browsing cool stuff. There's the androidviews.net. There are a couple of really nice ones in there. There are also some ones that I really don't like. Here, for instance, you have the staggered grid view. That one's a good one. There's also a couple of like calendar widgets. There's one by Square. Here, actually, right there, Times Square. There are some nice things in there. It's definitely worth a look. They also have other stuff, some animations and libraries. So it's a good general resource. And a nice follow up to this is maybe this 3-part tutorial by the guys at JWay. They have made this nice chart control, and you can see it's really smooth. It's very nice. I say really smooth, but not quite smooth enough, because I saw this. Shame on them. Okay, well, my code is also up on the web, so if you want to grab it, there it is. Thanks. Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
Why are you not using the animation? You're doing it by each frame. You're incrementing the amount of times it's actually run.
Yeah.
You'll be using the time that's actually fast at the moment you're going to draw.
Yes. But that would take too much room on the slide. That's totally right. Yeah, I mean, what you're basically complaining about is that the amount that the arc sweeps is not time-based. It's frame-based, right? Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You can invoke the compatibility library has actually a few compat.posts on frame or whatever the name is to automatically post it correctly on Jelly Bean.
Okay, cool. Well, take your word for it. Then use that. This code is actually just for ICS and up, not for any particular reason, but I guess I was just a bit lazy. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah. You said that you can see the custom component in Eclipse.
Yes.
But what if the component is in an Android library?
Oh, Android libraries work. That's not a problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works. If it's from a jar, that's not going to work, of course, because jars can only contain the source and not the resources. So if you've defined attributes and styles or something, that's not going to work. But I think if you're trying to do it that way, you're going to run into all sorts of other problems. But you do bring me to a point of actually a different problem. And I didn't bring this up because then it wouldn't look all as perfect as I would like it to imply. And that is this. Yeah, as you can see, my fonts aren't being loaded up here. And the reason for that is, actually, if you look into the into Eclipse's log, what is happening is it doesn't have a context to grab the assets from. Of course you don't have a context because it's in ADT. You only have a context on a device. So not everything works. But fear not, there's always a solution. If you just, for instance, go into your code, I can do that right here, actually. If you just go into your code and for this custom component, and it's right now giving errors. If I want to remove those errors out of there, for instance, what I could do is I could say and not what is it, view dot, oh sorry, my bad, is in edit mode. And what this actually does is, here, this is, whether it's in edit mode, yeah, it's exactly for the developer tool. It will tell basically the component that Eclipse is trying to draw it. So you can knock out some logic so that it still kind of looks pretty in ADT, but it doesn't maybe do everything that you want it to. But that's, this is just cosmetics anyway, so it's not so bad. Other questions? Okay, cool. Thanks so much for your time.